be nice maybe if the future generation didn't have to go through what the millennials went through, so that maybe they're not as medicated.
And I don't think that they are. Like, the medical community, from what I've seen, is a lot more compassionate, especially with children. My son, we finally went the route of diagnosis over the summer. And I had my suspicions about him having ADHD, but I couldn't tell initially if that was me projecting onto him my experiences from when I was growing up and not being understood. So we waited to really give him that understanding of ADHD until after he was diagnosed. So over the summer, we went through the entire gambit of finally getting the diagnosis for our son. And as soon as we got it, yes, like 100% ADHD combined type. And that may change when he's older. But for now, combined type, which led us on a very interesting journey, because I wanted to see what was going to happen once we got into that funnel system. Like, once we had the paperwork, once the doctors knew us, what was that going to look like now? And the first thing that his doctor had said was, there's new apps for kids who have ADHD that actually teaches them cognitive behavioral therapy. And some of them, they're actually wearing a heart monitor sleeve, and they're seeing really good results.
Heart rate variability is an amazing tool now. I mean, it's so amazing, these biofeedback mechanisms. So it's amazing that your doctor's helping with that. I'm so happy to hear that.
But I'm hearing this more and more from so many other parents who also have kids who are neurodivergent, that medication is not the first thing that's being pushed. It's actually working on the environment, working on the communication, educating your kid about ADHD or about their beautiful concoction of neurodiversity. And if medication is needed, we can have that conversation.
That's awesome.
We actually almost did, because we went through a massive upheaval in September and October. And I could see the effects on our son. Like, he was having meltdowns where he was going into full lizard brain. Like, he was not human anymore. He was losing it. And it was because his environment was so chaotic at that point. There was no consistency. There wasn't very much compassion to what he was going through. And then add the neurodivergent level to it, and that's an overstimulating, very emotional time that you don't have any context for. So your body just goes into like full cortisol release. And we thought about actually getting him medicated at that point, just to help him through that transition. Talking with the doctor, she agreed. She was like, I think it would be really beneficial. It might not fully kick in for about 3 months, but depending how long this transition is, we might be able to get him on medication for just a short amount of time, like 6 months to a year, so that his brain can learn about what that baseline looks like and then start to wean him off of it. But we would only do that if there's good communication.
That's amazing.
If the parents are okay with it. But doctors now are taking a much more human approach to really facilitating healing, instead of just being like, this pill will fix this. Like, the pill doesn't fix it.
No.
But maybe the environment that you have around the understanding that this medication can be beneficial, and either show you that it's helpful, or that now you have kind of that marker about what that feels like, what that looks like, and then you can wean yourself off of it, still with the memories.
I mean, like you said, that the medication can teach him how to experience what his goal is, his end goal is. And that's something that, I learned, self-medicating, but not having kids and not having going through what you're going through, I had no idea that the mainstream doctors are finally getting this, because the only people I've ever come across that talk about this are all fringe people. They're all doing their own things, or they're in, or they're new fringe studies. So the fact that your family doctor is on that mindset is amazing and wonderful. Like that's just really awesome. And it's very hopeful for the rest of the world too, or for the rest of, our community in America, because that should proliferate, I would think, so that other kids are getting the same experience.
I would hope so. And I mean, my experience, I have been really happy with. We ended up actually not medicating our son. Instead, because we've always had this open dialogue with him.
Yeah.
And I get to be his advocate. I
Yeah.
get to like really let him know, like, I have ADHD too. And sometimes that's why I do this. Sometimes that's why I do this. Sometimes that's why I have these weird systems set in place. But I'm able to talk to him about it.
That's
And
awesome.
not every kid is going to have an advocate within their house who's going to be open and honest about, well, why do you flip your vitamins upside down before you put them in the pantry? It's like, well, I flip them upside down so that I can remember if I took them this morning or not, and don't take them another time because my brain offloaded that information.
Yep.
Or why do I have so many alarms set on my phone? Because I'm time blind. There will be moments throughout the day where I think that it took me 20 minutes to do something and it's been 4 hours.
Right.
So not every household is going to look the same way, and not every doctor is going to approach ADHD the same way. But it does lead to a more hopeful view of the future the more that doctors maintain this mentality that medication is not always the right answer. And I hope that many other parents are able to be an advocate for their kid, whether they're neurodivergent or not, and being able to really shed a lot more compassion for their kids' growth mentally than what was given to millennials or Gen X.
I mean, that's so amazing and hopeful. And I mean, ultimately, the parents like yourselves, you and your husband are, are a large push behind that, if they know that they need to be pushing for it. And hopefully more parents, hopefully, parents will listen to this and hear that and go, oh, wait, I can do something else for my kid, because heart rate variability is not widely talked about. So maybe in their community, they've not heard of it. Just to recall, and this maybe will help us wrap up this first go around. You talked early on, so long ago at the beginning of the conversation, about the hypnagogic states. Have you been able to teach him any of that? Has that been something that he has shown any interest in?
Well, children's brain development is obviously very different than when we're comparing it to an adult. Their ability to be in the present moment and to have nonstop creative thoughts, I mean, that is kind of their baseline right now.
Being a child, yeah.
Yeah. Adults crave that. Our brain craves that childlike creativity. The hypnagogic state is probably very similar to what kids under 10 are experiencing all the time. So teaching kids how to recognize emotions, naming them and feeling them, might help them to better understand their present moment. But kids are already living in that present moment. in ways that adults are not.
That makes sense to me. The reason why I ask and the reason why I bring it back up, aside from the fact that, I don't want to, you've been with me for so long, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and we can always do a round two down the road. But the reason why I thought it might be apropos is because if he's getting stuck, or if any individual of any age is getting stuck in an emotional state of mind or being, then they're not open to the larger imaginative world, or the, that hypnagogic state of kind of somewhere between waking and dreaming. And my thought was, if there's techniques that you have, and maybe this is not apropos at all, but the reason why I brought it up is because if there's techniques that you have to get into that state, then that might be the technique that gets him out of the
lizard brain moments.
Yeah. If he's able to
cognitively get there,
or you're able to help him have a trigger to get there. Like, remember that training, remember that, try that right now. And then he does it. I have no idea. I'm just curious if it would work, or if
it kind of depends on the situation and where they're at with their mental development. If you can imagine, you have an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain, and
Sure.
you can understand that there are levels to get from one side to the other. You are able to go from the emotional response to the logical response.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to climb that ladder between lower brain and upper brain. Kids' brains don't have a fully formed ladder yet. They don't have the understanding of the difference between the emotional and the logical. They don't have that connection. So when you are noticing that in their present state, something is really agitating them, they're hyper focused on whatever that emotion is, or that situation that's making them feel angry or upset or not heard. I mean, not many parents can do this. I don't do it as often as I wish I was capable of. Catching it before it goes into that emotional state.
Right.
Catching that moment where you can still help them build that ladder.
Right. Okay.
But it's a very, very, very fine point that sometimes you don't even recognize is staring you in the face until an emotional response, a tantrum.
Right.
And I mean, those are normal. Like, tantrums and emotional outbursts for kids are completely normal.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's part of the brain development, part of the emotional and psychological development.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't think that there's any way around it from a developmental standpoint. But it's interesting the way you put it. The ladder, you're still building the ladder at age 10. And because there's certain functions that aren't possible. Like, they literally aren't possible. Like, I mean, like, if you just look at another animal, like, dogs are not capable of rationalizing anything. They're just not capable of it. But a child isn't capable of rationalizing either at a certain age, and then at some point in time they can start rationalizing. So that's a neurological development thing. That's the brain just isn't capable of it at a certain point, and then all of a sudden it is.
Well, I think validation is one of the key components for helping somebody understand the emotional and the logical. Because if you're having that emotional experience, whether it's a tantrum, anger, whatever, having somebody actually validate those feelings for you, and while you're experiencing them, not trying to speak logic to you.
Yeah.
Not sitting there going, oh, well, you're just mad because of blah, blah, blah. Well, your next step is this. while they're having the tantrum. Instead, just holding space and validating them.
Yeah, logic and emotions don't go real well together.
Not too much. But, that's another aspect of mindfulness, because if they're in that moment, it's not necessarily about fixing it. It's about helping them work through it in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think a lot of adults now are trying to figure out. How can they validate their own feelings and be safe in it so that they can process it the right way? Because I'm sure a lot of us who have experienced childhood trauma and we're still working through some of that inner child work, that's probably one of the main components that we're most confused about. Like, what does it look like to actually have our feelings validated? What does it look like to not try to speak logic to yourself when really all you need to do is just feel something and feel validated in that experience alone, and to grow from that?
God, I mean, I know we need to wrap this up because I've taken up so much of your time.
Sorry.
But no, this is amazing. I mean, we could continue talking for another several hours, I'm sure. My final thought, and then I want you to, respond to this, and don't forget to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and it's the easiest way to support this channel. Want more? Check out this clip or the full episode on our channel. Also, check out our affiliate links. You might find a lot of value from them. Thanks for listening. See you next time.